being here. I think more people will come, but we thought at the beginning, at least, it would be good to just go over some of the questions that we think are some of the frequently asked types of questions that we get, or even some of the questions that we thought about when we were thinking about what we wanted to do after our undergraduate education. So we'll do some of that. I'll just provide some introductory remarks, and then we'll have Kevin Esterling, he's a professor in both political science and public policy, but he's also the Associate Dean of the Graduate Division, essentially all graduate programs at UCR. Both of us, as I said, are professors in public policy. Then we'll have Will Su, who is the Student Admissions Coordinator. Is that correct? Is that the title? Student Affairs Coordinator, primarily the person in charge of admissions to our program and outreach. So he'll say a bit about the program that we have here, and maybe a little bit just more about MPP programs and MPA programs and how they might be different from each other. And then we'll have Indridi Indridason, who's our Director of Graduate Admissions in the Department of Political Science. So part of what we will cover is what's the difference between political science and public policy. We get a lot of students who ask that coming into our program in political science. Now we actually have a school of public policy where we can say, well, here are your options depending on what you want to do. I'm Karthick Ramakrishnan. I'm a professor in the School of Public Policy and in political science, and I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Public Policy. Thank you for being here. This is something that we organized pretty quickly this year, but this is something that we will most likely do on an annual basis. Especially, this is the time when you guys are starting to think about applying for graduate programs next year, and we want to really open it up for questions and answers that you might have for yourself or other people who are friends that are thinking about some of these programs. So I'll just leave it at that and turn it over to the master.
All right, thanks. So, I just want to, what I'm going to try to do is just talk about, at a very general level, about the difference between, I'm not going to...
Just move closer to that, because he's recording it and he won't hear you.
So between political science and public policy, you know, how they're similar and how they're different. But mostly talk about their differences so you can start to think about kind of which career path would be right for me if either one of them. So both political science and public policy in general offer both master's and PhD degrees, although here, as Will explain to you in a minute, we haven't set up a PhD degree program yet in public policy. We're probably a few years out from doing that. Political science has had an MA and a PhD program for a very long time. But what I'm going to do is talk at a very general level about kind of the differences between political science and public policy, but I want to start with a caveat that like every program is different. So we have our programs here at UCR. We want you to come here because these are actually the very best graduate programs in the whole world here at UCR. So you should come here for sure. But you also want to investigate other programs too. And so when you know, even though I'll be sort of drawing this kind of broad paint brush of the two different kinds of programs, each program is different. And so you want to be sure that you kind of research programs and go online and really investigate them before you start applying places. But I do want to talk about how the two kinds of degrees, sort of what they do and how they're different. Because the training for each type of degree is really different. And it's really important for you to figure out kind of if you're going to do one or the other or neither of those, you really want to figure out which kind of program is a good fit for your own kind of personality and interests and objectives, because it's just the case that for whatever you do in your life that you have to be really kind of intrinsically interested in what you're doing to be successful. Okay, and so that's what I'm going to try to do is help you sort of think through, you know, which kind of person you are and how that might fit to the different kinds of programs. So first I'll talk about political science. Political science programs are primarily preparation for a career in academia, as a college or university professor, where you're doing mostly research and teaching. sort of like what we do. Like you all know college professors. So if you go to get a degree in political science, you're kind of tracking yourself to do like what your college professors do. And and so I'm a college professor. I can tell you, I like it tremendously. I would not trade it for the world. I think it's the very best job and a fit for me. But I need to say that being a college professor and doing kind of research and teaching is not necessarily a good fit for everyone. And the reason is because to do well in academia and political science, and it would be true if you did sociology or economics or the other disciplines, that you really have to have this kind of intrinsic motivation that you want to do research that produces new knowledge. And that you really, for the most part, if you're in one of the disciplines like political science or economics or sociology, you really have to be comfortable kind of living in a very conceptual world of ideas. And a lot of times, if not most of the time, if not all of the time, the work, the sort of new knowledge that you produce is not going to have a direct application to specific social problems in the real world. But instead, you'll be kind of, you can think of it sort of that the work you do in researching in political science, you're not going to be building a better mousetrap yourself, but you'll be helping people to think about how they might build a better mousetrap. You're sort of kind of doing this kind of higher level sort of conceptual work. Now you would, of course, also, if you become a college professor, you're also going to do train undergraduates like you guys, and also graduate students. And so that's really a way to have a direct impact on the world, because you're helping people sort of themselves think through about how to advance their own careers. But in political science, you're, for the most part, because the training really is geared toward academia, really the degree that you're going to, the primary degree in political science is a doctorate or a PhD. Because you need a PhD in order to become a university or a college professor. That's true with every single professor on this campus has a PhD. There is an MA in political science, but the MA in political science is not what we call a terminal degree. It's not a degree that kind of sets you off to a career. It's not sort of it's not a sort of a normal career track. Instead, what people do, people will do an MA degree in political science in order to improve their preparation to get into a PhD program. But so in contrast, in public policy, the training there is primarily to help you prepare for a career where you're going to apply research and analysis to solve specific social real-world problems. And so this is a great career for you if you want to have a meaningful job where you're kind of hands-on trying to solve specific social problems or economic problems, and you want to do that using your brain, that you want to actually sort of use kind of research and analysis and ideas in order to make the world better. So it's a great career for students who want to have a meaningful job where you're sort of intellectually engaged in your work, but you're not sort of living in this kind of ivory tower kind of conceptual world. You're actually working to sort of make the world around you a better place. The MPP degree that we'll talk about is a terminal degree in the sense that it's a credential that really is marketable, that will help you in a very direct way get a job at a government agency or a think tank or a nonprofit or a community organization, the kind of agencies where people actually do work to try to solve social problems. An MPP degree very much helps you to get that kind of a job. You can also go elsewhere and get a PhD in public policy, which might also track you to academia, but PhDs in public policy also can help kind of prepare you sort of for higher level positions in those kinds of agencies. So the public policy degree is a very flexible degree, and like I said, I find that a lot of times students really like the thought of getting a policy degree because, it's this you feel like it's a career where you can feel like you're making a difference, but that you're able to kind of engage the world with sort of your own sort of best thinking and ideas for how to make the world a better place.
Why don't we just pause there,
yeah.
then we can come back in a roundtable. Thank you, Professor Esterling. Then we have Will Sid.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming today. The MPP program here at UCR is a 2-year course-based master's program. As Professor Esterling said, it is a terminal degree program. part of that, over that 2 year, the summer going into your second year, we're doing a internship where we give you $5,000 to complete that as well. And then in year 2, you're finishing up your core coursework and taking your elective or specialization courses during that time as well. You finish off with the capstone project in winter and spring quarter of your second year. And your experiences that you have during your internship during the summer feed into that capstone project as well. So some of the major themes that we have here at UCR, the main one is how social policy and environmental policies interact with each other. This is our major theme here at UCR. To kind of differentiate ourselves from UCLA or UC Berkeley, theirs is a more generalized MPP program. UC Irvine's focus is on social justice, which works well with their law school, and UCSD is focused on international relations. So that's not to say if you have interest in those other areas that our program here won't work for you. We certainly are a very interdisciplinary program. We're working with many different departments, and if you look at our faculty listing online, you'll see many of our faculty are from many different departments across campus as well. And so no matter what area you want to specialize in, we can certainly accommodate those interests as well. So some of the other areas of focus within our program, regional policy making, global, local connections, and really working on taking advantage of the diversity that we have here at UC Riverside and the Inland Empire in general. As far as, do you want me to go over admissions requirements?
Yeah, that'd be great.
As far as admissions requirements, we want to see a bachelor's degree. Most of you are earning your bachelor's degree right now. We are also looking at courses in microeconomics, statistics, and intro to politics and government. If you're missing some of those courses, it's okay. You can still get into the program. What will happen is you'll meet with the graduate advisor, and the grad advisor would recommend undergraduate level courses to take or auditing that course. Other requirements, we're looking at a 3.0 GPA. We look at the last 2 years of your undergraduate transcript. And
Oh, we'll just hold off on questions because we're going to have a Q&A
okay.
right after this.
We look at the last 90 units you took here at UCR and recalculate your GPA. What we see is most students' GPA increases as a result because you're taking most of your upper division interest courses your last 2 years here. We're also looking at an overall GRE of 300. Again, these are minimums, 3.0 GPA, 300 minimum GRE. You want to remain north of those to remain competitive with other applicants. And 3 letters of recommendation, 2 of which should be from a professor here.
Or professor anywhere, right? I mean,
right, or professor anyway, sorry.
Right.
Some examples of careers that you might go into with an MPP degree. Policy analyst at a local, state, or federal level. One example being like the EPA, for example. An advocate for different policy interests or issues. A public relations officer, where you're the face of a company and really interacting with the public as well, and getting across your points of view. If you work in administration, if you're currently a working professional and wish to move up in administration, and an MPP can help you get there as well. And if you want to be a program administrator, supervisor, or director, really being in charge of a program or a nonprofit organization.
Great. We're going to have a Q&A. I just want to make sure that people get as much of the information as they have now, and then and you guys can ask questions of the audience. I have a couple of follow-up things to ask as well. So.
Okay, so thanks for coming here. So the Department of Political Science offers 2 degrees, like Kevin mentioned, so a PhD program and a master's program. And so the master's program at UCR is a little bit different from a lot of the master's programs offered also. So at a lot of universities, the master's programs in political science are sort of thought of terminal degrees. In our case, it's not, because it's really a you're taking the same courses as the PhD students, with the PhD students. And so it's a really nice program if you're planning to go ahead and pursue a PhD. So most of what I'm going to say is actually about the PhD program, and I'll just start by trying to give you a little sort of a sense of what is involved in getting a PhD in political science. So basically the structure of our program is that you spend the first a little bit more than 2 years on taking courses. So these are courses going to be from a variety of fields in political science, and they also include methods courses, both quantitative and qualitative methods. And so you're sort of getting a broad training in political science, but you're also going to be choosing 2 fields that are going to be your fields of specialization. And so in our program, we have 5 fields: so American politics, comparative politics, international relations, political theory, and mass behavior. And so in the fall of your 3rd year, you're going to be taking comprehensive exams in 2 of these fields. Now, once you pass the comprehensive exams, that's when you start, well, you may start doing research a little bit earlier, or sort of planning ahead in terms of your research, but that's where formally the research stage of the PhD starts. And the first step in doing that is coming up with a dissertation prospectus. Dissertation prospectus is basically sort of an extensive plan on what the dissertation is going to be on. So you're basically telling the faculty what you're going to be working on over the next 2 or 3 years, which is what you're going to be doing for the next 2 or 3 years. You're going to be working on your dissertation. And so up to that point, your life is going to be fairly structured because you're taking courses, taking the exam and so on. But once you hit the dissertation writing stage, you have to structure your time a lot on your own. So for some people that can be a little bit difficult, other people have more discipline and force ahead. But through that stage, you're also working very closely with your advisor and your dissertation committee. And so it's not like you're sitting in a corner somewhere just working on the dissertation, but you do interact with the faculty, get feedback on what you're doing, and so on. So that's, and so the time to completion, so the normative time in our program is 6 years. And so it's a big commitment to start a PhD program. One thing to note about it is that you don't need a master's degree to apply to the PhD program. And if you enter the program without a master's degree, you do get a master's degree on the way. So basically when you, after you take the comprehensive exams. Now, a little bit about the admission process. So the requirements are not very different from the MDP program. So basically, the application consists of a personal statement and a statement of interest, where you sort of try to explain why you want to do a PhD, and try to give us some idea of what you might want to work on. So important part of that, so before you do that, you need to find the right PhD program. And so it's not really the case that you just want to pick any PhD program out there and go there. But you do want to take a close look at the faculty in any given department and make sure that the department has faculty that works on things that are related to what you want to study. Because you don't want to end up in a place where you don't have anyone advising you. So if you want to study Chinese politics, you probably don't want to apply to our program because currently we don't have any faculty studying this area. So that is sort of important, and it's also in terms of practical advice when you're applying the program. You do want to make that very clear when you apply. You want to tell the admission committee that these are the people that you want to work with, these are the projects that you could see yourself working on. And that of course may change, like you may get into the program and you find something completely different and exciting and you want to study that. That is completely fine, but you want to convey in your application that you have some idea what you want to do. Other parts of the application, so we need transcripts from the institutions you attended. You need to take the GRE, and if you're a foreign student, you also need to take the TOEFL exam. And we also require 3 levels of documentation. And in our case, we expect 3 professors who can get letters from you, email me about your situation. I would say it's okay. I need to know about it. One thing about the application, so we do offer financial support, and there's no separate application for that. When you apply to a program before the January 5th deadline, you're going to be considered for financial support. So very briefly, the financial support we offer is generally in the first year you have a fellowship, which means that your fees are covered and you get a stipend. Then in subsequent years, students are typically fund their studies by being teaching assistants. This means that you're all TAs. That's going to be your life.
Although you can apply for fellowships that can,
Yeah.
Right.
competitive fellowships.
Yeah, and so there are some opportunities for graduate research assistantship once in a while, and we do encourage students to apply for external fellowships. So for example, the National Science Foundation has a fellowship that you can actually apply for before you get into a program, and also in the first year in the program. We try to encourage students to do that because these, they free you from, from being a teaching assistant, which is, being a teaching assistant is not bad, but it takes time, right? And so if you have external fellowships, you can devote more time to getting your PhD done, finishing your dissertation, and moving on.
So maybe we'll just pause there. So some of you already have questions. One thing I should say at the outset too, I think things are changing a little bit too. So even with political science PhDs or any kind of PhDs, there are people who are now getting jobs outside of academia too. So you don't necessarily. Chances are that you probably think you're going to be a college professor, but if you're not, I mean, you could work in, say, in polling organizations, even in government agencies with PhDs, either in public policy or in political science. But the key with the PhD, regardless of what you do it in, it's a bit more like a marathon, as opposed to an 800-meter race or a 400-meter race.
And also, if you do apply to a PhD program, even if you maybe you're thinking about getting a job outside of academia, you don't want to tell them
Yeah,
that,
don't mention it.
because it's not what they want you to do. So.
And another thing you should not mention, but this is something that I have said when you apply to PhD programs, a lot of people think, as Professor Indrivisan said, that you need to have a master's degree already. You absolutely do not. And it is something that you can even decide after a couple of years in a program, if it doesn't seem like it's something that you want to continue for another 4 years, you can leave, and chances are that you'll get your master's. So that's something to consider. But a master's in political science is very different from an MPP or an MPA. So kind of choose your paths wisely at this point. So I'm going to leave it at that. We already had someone with a question before, so why don't we just say who you are and who you're directing your question to.
Okay, well, my name is Nick. I just wanted to ask again what kind of courses and stuff, or coursework you were looking for on applications to grad school.
So which for which kind of a program?
MVP program.
For an MPP program. So what which is
So really the recommended courses that we have for the MPP program was microeconomics, an intro to politics and government, and statistics. And as I was saying before, if let's say you didn't take microeconomics in your undergrad, that is okay. You could still apply to the program. And what would happen is when you meet with the graduate advisor, they would look at your transcript and say, you're kind of lacking here in microeconomics. He'd either recommend that you take an undergraduate course here in microeconomics at UCR or audit course.
now, how about political science?
So in political science, we don't really have any requirements, but obviously having taken courses in political sciences tends to be useful. And also, I would also recommend that students take research methods courses, statistics, because that is maybe one of the things that surprises some students that come into PhD program is that you actually do need to undergraduate uses statistical methods, or I mean all of it uses some sort of methods, quantitative, and so the classes that students tend to struggle the most with are the methods classes. The better prepared you are taking basic algebra classes, statistics, that is something that will have to prepare you. But if you don't have those classes, that is sort of the case for most of our students. So it's not like it's an obstacle for getting into the program, or that you're going to be lagging behind all the students in the program. You're just going to be making your life easier in these classes.
And I would say if you haven't taken your GREs, I mean, of course, the overall score matters, but some programs might look, especially at your quantitative scores, to get a sense of how good you are on that. Did you want to say something? Okay. Any other questions that people have in the audience? Yes, back there.
Hi, my name is Madeline. This is for Will. How many microeconomics courses and statistics courses are you looking for? Are you looking for like one of each or two or more of each?
So I'm not familiar with the undergraduate microeconomics offered here at UCR, but my guess is if it's a quarter, is it a quarter course?
Right.
So that 1 quarter in microeconomics would qualify for it. I know that statistics is different for each area, depending on major. Are you currently a public policy?
I'm actually international affairs.
Okay. And have you already taken like a statistics course
No,
as part of
not
your
yet.
grad?
That's what I'm like looking for future courses.
Right. So the statistics that you would take in your breadth requirements could qualify for it. I know that before a couple of other faculty also recommended that if you can take a statistics that that kind of focuses or leans more towards a statistics course that leans, I guess, more towards the social sciences, that would be helpful in the public policy program.
Yep.
Hi, my name's Kara, and this is actually in reference to the earlier previous questions. I'm actually considering enrolling for a Masters of Public Policy program, and I understand that majority of the graduate schools do highly recommend that you take statistics course. Now, I'm in my last years, this is my senior year, and I was, debating whether I should take a statistics course because I'm planning to graduate early. I was talking with my advisor, and she was stating that as long as you have some background in statistics, that it's not necessarily like intro to statistics that it would count. How do you guys look at that? Like, if I do decide to take a statistics course, like at a community college, would you accept that as credit?
Absolutely, yes. And when you talk with the graduate advisor, when you're admitted into the program, they'll take a look at the type of statistics course that you've taken. And it's good that you already have the background there. If there's a particular topic within statistics that maybe you're a little bit lacking in or haven't gone over yet, they might recommend that you just audit the course, a related course, and sit in on a few lectures.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is, regardless of the type of program, either at UCR or outside, political science or public policy, don't just have it as a course, mention it in your statements, right? So for example, if you've used particular software or you're used to doing a certain kind of analysis, say that, because that gives us more confidence that you actually know something about what you did, as opposed to just having that as a requirement.
So what I kind of hear is people are worried about the statistics as a requirement for either of these programs. The thing I would tell you is that whichever kind of graduate program you go to, it's our job to train you. It's the program's job. So if you need to know statistics, the program will make sure that you learn statistics. And I think the important thing for both of these programs is that the admissions committee sees that you understand kind of why that's something you need to know, and having had an undergraduate class in that will help you a lot to be able to do that. But the thing is, the statistics that you get as an undergraduate is very different from the kind of statistical training you'll get as a graduate student, and so it really doesn't put you at a big disadvantage if you haven't even had a formal course in statistics. And so in political science, as public policy would be, and I find that the students who come in with no background at all in statistics tend to do just as well in our introductory statistics class as those who have had an undergraduate statistics class, because it's different, and it's kind of a higher level. And so don't worry about it. And just know that whatever program you go to, it's that the faculty's job to train you to learn what you need to know.
Right, yeah, I guess I should correct, yeah, most people probably do not work with particular software
Yeah.
at the undergrad level.
Yeah.
But if you do, or even if you have, skills that you've done with Excel, right, that go beyond just data entry.
But the admissions committee wants you to, for both of these programs, what we want to see is that you know what you're getting into, and you've thought it through, and that you're not going to be blindsided, like you get into public policy and you're like, I didn't know I need to do statistics, and we want to know that you know what you're getting into. So I think that's kind of the key.
One question that hasn't been brought up that I want to ask is it okay to go straight from undergrad to grad, or if people take some time off, what are the kinds of things you look for if they take any time in between undergrad and grad school?
It is okay if you go directly from undergraduate to graduate, and it is okay also if you take time off to work. For the first point, from undergrad to grad, we see a lot of students do that with our graduate programs here on campus, and particularly with UCR, we're the only UC that offers a major in public policy. So of course we want to hold on to those students and bring them into our graduate program as well. On the flip side, if you decide to go to work, or if there's a long gap between your undergraduate and graduate, that's okay. We like to see work experience. It brings in a unique point of view into the graduate program, and it also says a lot for the student that it went out there and worked ahead of time and got real world experience and came in. And those students tend to take the program seriously and want to succeed as well. That's not to say if you're an undergraduate coming in you won't succeed. It's just that once you're at work, you really know what you want to do and focus on, and that's what you're there to earn your degree.
So in the PhD program, it's fairly similar. I think probably the majority of the applicants we get are come straight out of either a bachelor's program or a master's program. Some do have work experience, and it doesn't really factor all that much into our admission decision. Although there are certain things that are obviously attractive, like if people have worked on political campaigns or been involved in politics or worked in areas that are related to political science in some way, we see that also as bringing something into the program. They have something, it sort of shows that they were invested in a particular topic, so they're motivated, maybe a little bit more than the average.
And one thing I'll say on, just as the School of Public Policy is fine and even encourages people here to apply, we've had some decent experiences with people who might be locationally constrained and apply to a PhD in political science and do well. But the key, I would say, at least from a political science perspective, I still haven't figured out kind of School of Public Policy what we would encourage on that side. But what Professor Esterling says really resonates with me, that try to look at different programs. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even if ultimately, if you got admitted to UCR, you would go to UCR, it would be good for you to have choices, because then you can compare different packages too, right? School of Public Policy is fundraising for scholarships for the inaugural class. We have these fellowships that are available through political science and through the university more generally. So shop around and compare, but apply. I would say if you can afford to apply to more than one program, you should strongly think about doing so, because it just gives you more options.
I have a question for you guys. So who came here? You can answer yes to both of these questions.
Maybe show of hands.
So yeah, show of hands. Who came here because you had an interest in maybe what the graduate program in public policy was like? Raise your hand. And who came here? You can answer yes to this too. Who came here because you were thinking about just interested in what a degree in political science looked like? All right. Hey, good job. The one thing I was gonna say about...
This is not a scientific poll.
Yeah. But the thing I would say is, when you fill out if you fill out an application for political science, that what the career looks like is you'd be producing the kind of research that you're reading in your classes, okay? And that it's not, when you're writing your personal statement, what you want to do is convince the admissions committee that you understand that and that you're ready to engage in research. And so what you don't want to do in your personal statement is say, you know, ever since I was a kid, I've loved politics, and I'm so interested, and I want to be a member of Congress someday, right? That will not get you into any political science PhD program, because it's just not what we do. We don't train, you know, that's what public policy would do, you know, but we don't. So you just want to really sort of think about that, and think about what you find interesting in your undergraduate classes, about what is it that you thought was cool, and what is actually, you could see yourself kind of dedicating the next, you know, 10 years of your life to work on a research topic.
Okay, PhD does not take 10 years, but yeah.
Well, but you end up working on it for a while afterwards, so.
Sort of the follow-up on that. So I, like, in reviewing applications, you know, we very much get the sense that, you know, the student or the applicant is, you know, trying to come as, or trying to get into the program. And so it's very much, the lab is often very much focused on, you know, I'm bringing, you know, this is why I want to come here. But the other way to think about it, which I think is useful, is to think about the fact that, you know, when we let you into the program, we're stuck with you for the next 6 years, right? And what we're interested in is to bring in people that we actually, you know, want to work with, right? And so, you know, sort of convincing us that, you know, that if you come to our PhD program, that's going to be a beneficial relationship for you and for us, is also something that is important. Because a lot of our faculty like work with graduate students, not just in terms of training, but also co-author with them. So I've written papers with graduate students, both of you guys have. And so we're, you know, we're not, you know, it's not sort of in the sense we're hiring people or getting people to come into the program, but, you know, you're going to be seen as our colleagues over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
think about both sides of those equations when you write it.
Right, and not to say that you need to be boring, like you can have your personality come through, and all of us have dreams. Like you know, I think when I wrote my applications, I talked about how I've been, you know, when I was a kid, my parent, like we'd watch the Sunday like politics talk shows, like, and that was like an important part of why I got interested in politics. So you don't have to suppress that. Right? So you can have your history and personality and what brings you in here, but you should also talk about the classes and the kind of the topics that you found so interesting in the classes, and if you've done a particular research paper that really excited you, you know, and so talk about that. You know, I don't think the policy program has writing samples, does it? For the application? For political science, that we do, right?
It's optional.
It's optional.
Yeah.
So if there's a research paper that you are especially proud of, or something that really excited you, you know, you can talk about it and maybe even include it in your application.
My name is Bianca. I have a question about the PhD in political science. So when you're preparing your statement, is it okay to express that you want to venture to a different area than you do your undergrad thesis in? Yeah, but it's all really different.
Yeah, so say the question out loud for everyone else too.
So the question is, can you say in your personal statement, which is actually very important for when you're applying to a PhD program, people read your personal statement really carefully to try to sort of see that you have this intrinsic motivation to engage in the research, but that you also kind of know what research is and why you're excited about research. And so Bianca's question is, can you say that you're interested in doing research, pursuing research at the graduate level on a topic that you didn't study as an undergrad? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. That it's just all we want to do is see that we want to see that you talk about that topic, at, you know, in an informed enough way that we can see that you would know how to research it. And the thing I was going to say, I was also thinking just that's actually kind of a follow-on to that, is what you all should do, and this is true whether you want to do public policy or political science, but maybe especially for political science, is you should talk to professors. So when you're ready and you start writing your personal statement, I mean, any professor in that hallway in political science would talk to you any day of the week to talk to you about your personal statement, and also we're a good resource to talk to you guys about what might be a good program that's a good fit for you. And it's because Professor Andreessen mentioned earlier, is that really, you know, what you, there has to be, another thing the admissions committee really looks for is a fit between what you're generally interested in and what they can train you in. And so there'll be people in our applicant pool that will have stellar grades and stellar GREs that we don't admit at all because we just can't help them. We can't do anything to train them. And so what you want to do, for both of, I mean, I'll certainly make the offer for us for both of these degrees, but then I think that might be especially true for political science, is you would want to talk to professors about your interests and how to write your personal statement, but also to talk about, well, what programs are out there that would really fit your interests. And then the professors here can do a lot to help you get into programs. So you know, we can actually do quite a bit to help you get into places. So
Yeah, one thing let me
take us
also,
up on that.
yeah, one thing I'll also say in terms of reaching out to professors, and this is something that I have found time and again in terms, there are students at UCR who do really well in classes but are too shy and reluctant to go to professors and talk to them during office hours. I'd much rather talk to people who are doing well than people who are coming in like complaining about grades that they got, right? And it's really a missed opportunity, and I find, especially at UCR, students here are not as savvy to know kind of these are the things that matter, because I've had students who've been at the top of the class and they come at the end of the quarter and say, can you write me a letter? And it's like, I could, and I will, but it's not going to be as good of a letter as if I had talked to you. That said, it's not too late. If you've done well in some of these classes, don't feel shy to go and talk to the professor and say, hey, I did well in your class, I was too shy to come and talk to you. But these are some of the things I'm interested in. I'm actually thinking about a graduate program. I was wondering if I could, you know, when your office hours are, if it's during office hours, I wonder if I can just talk to you a little bit about that. You can also ask if they have any projects that, you know, that they might be able to use any help in terms of research opportunities. What I usually say if someone comes to me with that is, do you have a resume? That indicates a level of preparation and professionalization that you should think about. If you don't have a resume already, try to come up with one. And in the resume, you should have your GPA, your relevant education and job experience, but also if you have any skills, you know, if you've worked with Microsoft Excel, for example, or if you've done literature reviews or anything that you think might be relevant, put that in the skills, and if you have references, a couple of references. It's just things that for us, we're happy to help, but if people are prepared, it just boosts our level of confidence that we'll be helping people who are already kind of halfway there, right, in terms of applying to graduate. Yeah.
I'm interested in the policy, and recently have you been in contact with the graduate advisor?
Any program you're saying, or at the UCR one?
Yes.
Oh, here's the.
So I'm the student affairs coordinator for public policy, and you would mainly interact with me if you have questions on like your application or during the admissions process, and later when you're an enrolled student you would interact with me as well for various student affairs issues. When you talk about the graduate advisor for the program, that's Professor Barenclaw. You would go to him if you had any issues maybe with a particular course or different topics that might come up in a course, or if you had an issue with a faculty member, or if you're in the PhD program, if you had maybe issues with an advisor. So they handle, grad advisors handle things on a much different level and interact with graduate division for any student affairs issues. For day-to-day student affairs issues, you would come see me.
And the big bonus with Professor Baron-Clough is that he used to work in graduate division as an associate dean. So, we're like powerful people here. But one thing I should also say, in addition to all these questions, there's some kind of food and reception afterwards. So if you have particular things about your case, come and talk to us too. We're happy to.
And before anybody else goes, just so you know, this is just starting the conversation. And so I'm serious about if any of you are interested in graduate school, you'll be surprised how excited faculty
we
get
love that.
when you come and you want to talk to us about it. It makes us really happy. And so take us up on that, because we can help a lot. Okay.
Hi, I'm Ian, and I know you guys talked about recommended courses that you should take if you're interested in taking like either of these programs, and that you should also share the interest that you found from undergraduate courses. But what specific interests, like, do you know of that would suggest taking one path rather than the other? So, like, what would suggest you take you go into the Masters of Public Policy program as opposed to political science program?
From the courses or background
Yeah.
that you. So I mean, so this is, you know, it's kind of a tough call, and some people would apply to both. In fact, I was thinking when I was applying to grad school, I was thinking really hard about, and not just public policy and political science, I was also thinking about law school, right? And so because it's kind of like you're at an exciting stage in which you're thinking, okay, there's something more than a bachelor's degree that I want, but what exactly do I want to do? And that's part of the reason why I was thinking about law school is I was thinking about things like social justice, right? And if you want to work on things like social justice, you could do a law degree and do that. Part of the reason why I didn't do that is because I already had debt and I didn't want to go further into debt. And now it's even more challenging it's actually getting easier to get into law school, but that's actually kind of a problem because it's harder to get jobs outside of that, getting out of law school. I think the placement after MPP programs is decent because a lot of people either already have experience or, you know, yes, there might be times in which there are government cutbacks, but there's other things outside of the public sector that you can work in with a public policy degree. And this is where I think maybe to talk a little bit about MPA versus MPP, I don't know if Will, you can talk about that. But that might be something you think about if you want to go to another program that's an MPA program that would be different from our MPP. But I think to talk about what excited you about the classes and the topics would be the same regardless. I think the key is what do you want to do afterwards. So if you know that you want to work in a government agency, or if you want to work in a think tank, that is a job option. I don't think we would look askance at that. I mean, at least this would be my recommendation to our grad admissions advisor, is that more and more there are people who are getting PhDs where it's difficult to get a tenure track academic job. And to work in a think tank afterwards is fine. It's not a waste of a PhD to do something.
But I mean, just to say that, just in terms of what you have to kind of think about what interests you and what you want to do with the rest of your life. And you know, what I find is that it's not uncommon for people who are incredibly gifted and smart to come into a political science program and realize that it's really not. If you're like an activist and you want to make a change in the world, in a community, and you want kind of a direct hands-on impact, people who intrinsically want to do that tend to get frustrated in political science programs because it's at kind of, the training is at sort of a higher level.
Well, I disagree with that.
I think it's...
No, you could get frustrated, but this is what I would say, is I came in wanting to be an activist. In many ways, I continue to be an activist. You're just a different kind of an activist, right? So I think of myself as an information activist. So I try to plug in research as much as possible. And the kinds of issues I'm involved in are things like immigration, raising the visibility of Asian Americans. So part of it is it's different styles, but it does mean that if you're going to go into a research program, the research takes front and center. Part of the thing too, I think, is even if you're talking about what your interests are, you will most likely change your mind in terms of what you study in grad school. I actually changed my mind pretty dramatically in terms of what I do. This is and I'm not going to change my mind because chances are that once you take your courses in the first couple of years, you will. But it's a difference in style, right? And I would say my case is not exceptional, especially people who are studying, let's say, identity politics. A lot of times they came in to the study of it because of of things they got involved in. But it was always I'd say it's not something that you shut out, but it's something that's always a juggling act if you are an activist, to figure out how much of what you're looking at is based on research and a more kind of objective set of motivations versus things that might not be. And on something like immigration, you know, I mean, especially given what's going on right now, it's so easy to just focus on what you think should be, right, as opposed to what is. But this is something I would say that's true even if you come in here to study public policy, is no matter what your prior preconceptions are or what your ideological commitments are, it's important to be able to take a step back and critically assess. And that should come through in your application to some extent too. And again, it's kind of like this, we don't want you to suppress your personality, or, you know, of course there are issues that are motivating you that you feel passionate about, but also show that you have an appreciation for critical analysis, right? To not just do things that confirm what you already thought before, but things that made you rethink some of your assumptions coming in. So, but could you talk about MPA versus MPP, Will, a little bit?
One of the advantages of earning an MPP, it's a very flexible degree in that it would allow you to take those skills that you learn within the program and apply it across many different sectors. It makes you very attractive to a potential employer. So some of the things that you do within the MPP program, such as feasibility studies, budget analysis, implementation and evaluation of policy, those are all skills that are transferable to many different areas. And what we've seen so far, there was a brief career study of graduates from MPP programs in 2011, and about 48% of those graduates went into some type of government position. A good majority, 28% I think, went into nonprofit, and then private sector was the next biggest one, and then about 4% were still going on for their PhD afterwards. So it gives you a good wide spectrum view of these different areas that MPP graduates are going into.
And they can go to PhDs in different disciplines too.
Right, exactly. The experiences that you have make you, it's a very adaptable and flexible degree. As far as Master's in Public Administration, I'm not as familiar with that, unfortunately. But my guess is that it is also a professional degree program, and it would prepare you for a career in public administration.
Right, I think the options are narrower in terms of what can happen.
Hi, my name's Ben. I'm actually from like the environmental science side, but I'm really interested in your guys' environmental and sustainable development policy. And since I don't really come from this background, I'm like, where could I go to get more information about? And like I love the science, but I'm really interested in like developing the science that has like these important impacts on the policy side. Like I want to develop things that get used in meaningful ways that are actually going to impact society. Right? So where would I go to find more information about like that specific program?
Well, you could come see me, first of all, and then I could give you a more generalized view of that information. We do have a lot of faculty from environmental sciences that are moving over into public policy or have split appointments in public policy. So you could come see me.
They've already moved over now.
Right, they have already moved over. So you can come see me, and I can refer you to specific faculty members depending on what your area of interest is within environmental studies.
So
And you can also take some so I teach the Public Policy 1 class right now. I don't know if it's, I heard it's not being offered in the winter, but maybe in the spring. But try to take something like that, because that will give you a sense of what an undergraduate class in public policy will give you a sense of what a graduate program might be like. You don't have to do it, but maybe even just sit in on the class if your schedule is filled up.
Yeah, I'm already a grad student, actually.
Oh, you are?
I'm just
Okay.
interested in this, like I said, I really love the science, but I'm
Talk to Ken Barenclaw.
in Bangalore.
Yeah, he just left your program. He's Kurt Schwab.
Yeah, those are, and Ariel Dinar, those are the three people, but Ariel's going to be out of the country starting in December, but Kurt and Ken Barenclaw, Professors Barenclaw and Schwabi will,
Talk to us.
yeah, talk to us afterwards, we'll hook you up.
Did you have another question?
Kind of. It was like a follow-up. It's more of a follow-up question. I guess for me personally, I have ranging interests, and it's hard for me to decide exactly what path I should take at this point. I am considering law school, but I show interest in like public policy. But I'm trying to figure out what led you to choose what you chose. Like, why did you decide to go into public policy? What goal and what interest led you to decide that was what was for you?
So yeah, I don't know. So I'll say more generally, because three of us are PhDs in political science, and Will, do you have a?
I have a bachelor's. I don't have a degree.
But I'll say from what I tell students, and also some of my personal background, others can say as well. So first of all, one thing you could do is actually do joint programs. So you could do a JD MPP, for example. And we don't offer a JD here, but other places will have joint programs. Or you can actually sequence them so that, say you get into a law school, and if that school doesn't have a public policy program, you can ask them, can I try to combine this in some way? And many places will have agreements with other places to be able to do that. We do not, as far as I know, have any kind of agreement with the JD program. But that's something that's actually good to think about for the future. What that'll mean is in sort of 5 years, you can do it in 4 years. Because the third year of a law degree is when you take a lot of your electives. And so you can end up taking electives that can help satisfy both. So I have seen that there are programs like that where you can do it. What I would say is, and this is part of my bias, so take it for what it's worth, right? Given what's happened, and I do a lot of work with a friend who's a law professor, and he's just telling me that he's at Santa Clara Law, and it is brutal in the law school world right now. I mean, there are law programs that are facing a lot of financial difficulties, or facing this problem of digging deeper and deeper into their admissions pool to admit people, because a lot of corporate law positions now are drying up. So the big law firm model is kind of increasingly untenable. Of course, there still will be big law firms, but that means there are fewer and fewer of those jobs. And so there have actually been instances of law students who haven't gotten jobs who have sued their programs for false advertising, right? So that is, but I don't want to make it like doom and gloom, but if that is where your passion is and your skills are and you have the background, go for it. I ended up deciding not to apply for everything, right? I ended up ultimately just applying for political science PhD programs. But I kind of wish that I'd also applied for an MPP program at the time. And that was because when I went to graduate school, it was at Princeton. They had a public policy program and a politics program. And I kind of looked over it from time to time at the Woodrow Wilson School. I was like, I wonder if life would have been different if I had done that, you know. But that's something that's inevitable. You'll always wonder if you've chosen a different path.
Again, you should just cold call somebody and just have that conversation, because the professor can help talk you through, sort of in that conversation, it might become a little bit clearer about how we can help you think that through.
But what I would say on a cold call is try to come in person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because if you just, we get calls all the time.
Yeah, that's what
and
I meant.
a lot of times we're not in our office.
That's what I meant, was, yeah. Do people care about funding? Are you guys interested in money?
So let's talk money and then we can go outside after that.
So one big difference, but it's not as big as it turns out to seem, is that a PhD program will pay you to go study there. Whether it's through a fellowship or through a TA-ship or a graduate research assistantship, you get your fees paid almost always. In fact, you wouldn't go to a PhD program that didn't do all of this. So they would pay your fees, and then you would get a stipend on top of that. That's generally enough to live on if you're very careful, right? It's not a get-rich-quick thing. But you can, if you're careful, you could finish your PhD and not have any additional debt beyond what you had from undergrad. But you have a PhD program is something like typically 6 years. Sometimes it's more like 7 years, and so you're making this kind of very low wage for many years. Master's programs, typically you pay for it yourself, both the fees and your own living stipend. Although, as Will was saying, that the first entering class here, they're trying to raise funds, so at least you don't have to pay your own fees. But for the most part, for most MA programs, you pay for it yourself. But it's a good investment because it's only 2 years. And then you get a degree that's marketable, and you get out and you get a job in your 3rd year, and you start earning income, right? And so if you think about your 3rd through 5th or 6th or 7th year, making that TA wage is a time that you could actually be pulling down a salary and saving towards retirement and all of that stuff. And the other, as Professor Ramakrishnan was mentioning a minute ago, that an MPP is a very good investment because sort of statistical reasoning and analysis is kind of the way of the future. The way that when I was in college, it was sort of legal analysis and legal thinking was what sort of was your ticket, and now it's becoming less so, and it's more of this kind of knowledge society kind of rewards the sort of analytical thinking that our programs offer. So I think an MPP is a good investment, even though you pay for it yourself, because then you'll have this very marketable degree, and you'll start making money pretty quickly out of school.
But again, I'm going to make it complicated for you. It doesn't mean that a political science PhD is a bad investment either. It's ultimately about fit, but what I would say is
it's an investment in time.
It's an investment in time. Right. Yeah, absolutely. But it's still. I mean, so first of all, don't talk about the return on investment in your application, because that's it's like I'm in it to make money. No, we want to know like what's substantively interesting for you, because that's the kind of thing that's going to sustain you, right? I mean, it's kind of corny to say it, but all of us feel is like we are doing things that even if we didn't get paid, we love what we do. Doesn't mean that people should pay us, but still, we're not in it for the money. And ultimately, I think that's the kind of thing that when you look at admissions files, it's like, someone just says, I know that this will make me money, or this will make me powerful. It's like,
but
maybe
that's a good closing selling point for both of these programs. Is that if you find the right fit, that you get a job, that you get out of bed in the morning and you want to get into the office because you want to work on what you're doing. And it's incredible. It is fantastic to have a job where you are intrinsically interested in what you're working on. And what you're working on, for all of us, we are working on what we think is the very most important thing that we could possibly be working on. And we want to do it, and it's really interesting. And but the key is that you really need to find the right fit for you, and again, whether you have an activist personality and you want to engage in communities, or you want to do research that kind of contributes to the accumulation of knowledge, and then what topic you want to do. You need to sort all of that out. But if you sort it out, you'll find that you're going to have a job that you find really rewarding, and that is incredibly important.
Great. Good note to end. So please join us outside. We have some refreshments, and you can talk to us more.